riding and the people of our riding enjoying the lower costs of energy immediately and having a higher means of income because of guaranteed livable income. I see everyone in the town that we call where the bones are piled, Askanaka Astegi, as having a higher standard of life. In Regina Elphinstone-Centre, I see people every day on the doorsteps who tell me that they're living on as little as $600 a day on the SED program, or $600 per month. That's clearly inadequate to manage to pay rent and also have enough to live. I want to see a guaranteed livable income where everyone's receiving the $2,000 a month that we as Canadians decided was needed when the CERB came in. This is completely possible. We can dream to end poverty and make it a reality in our city. I feel that in an era of a climate crisis, plans that talk about 2035 and 2050 are like planning to fail. We need to have set target limits that are indeed challenging, but we'll make sure that we have a livable world for our children. 60% target reductions of our CO2 emissions within 4 years and 100% renewable within 10 is what we need to do in order to live up to the report of the IPCC. And anything less is simply not enough. I don't want to argue with Regina's Renewable City Plan, but 2050 is decades too late. The Green Party, having a seat in government, would make sure that there is more than just two views represented in our government. True democracy would be served by knowing that everybody has a voice. I'm a down-to-earth person who is really relatable to the people of Regina Elphinstone-Centre. When you look at any of our messaging for the Saskatchewan Green Party or any of the leaflets that I have dropped off at people's doors, it has my personal phone number on, and people are shocked every single day when they phone up and say, oh, I didn't expect to get the leader of the party. I was just calling to get a sign on my lawn. That is the kind of responsible, responsive leadership that I offer. And I look forward to representing the people given the opportunity in the legislature in Regina. Thank you very much. And I look forward to getting to know all of you better tonight.
All right. Thanks a lot, Naomi. Okay, next up is Mira Conway from the NDP. I forgot to mention when we were setting up that I do have these cards that say 1 minute, 30 seconds, and 10 seconds as your time is winding down. And if you do go past the end of your time, I will unmute myself and clear my throat or something. Okay, Mira. You are, oh wait, cancel. Replace pin. There we go. You're up.
Great. Hi, my name is Mira Conway, and I'm the NDP candidate for Regina Elphinstone-Centre, as you know. I was born and raised in the Cathedral area. I hope I'm a familiar face to some of you. I live here now with my partner, Nick, who is a teacher at Imperial School, and our 1-year-old, Lou. Since moving back, I went away to study. I've been working, actually my dream job, as a public defender with legal aid. So I work in the criminal justice system, I work in the family law system, and I work in the child apprehension system. And through that work, I have stood by many residents of this riding during some of their toughest moments. My work has brought me up close and personal with some of the brewing crises in this province, whether it be the addiction crisis, the mental health crisis, the poverty crisis, the crisis of systemic racism that I saw every day. I was seeing important services that are chronically underfunded by the Sask Party government. I was seeing community organizations working hard but struggling to keep up with the need. And I was seeing no supports from the Sask Party government, no plan, almost a contempt for those who are struggling the most. And this started to keep me up at night. I grew up very proud of our collective legacy. My grandparents grew up in rural Saskatchewan. They fought for the cooperative structure. They fought on the front lines for Medicare, and they taught me values of solidarity, of public service, of compassion, and I wasn't seeing that in this government. And I never saw myself exiting law or the front lines and running for office, but I was starting to feel like my work at Legal Aid wasn't enough. I was seeing sort of the damaging changes ushered in by 12 years of a Sask Party government. Their cuts were making my job very difficult, but more importantly, they were making the lives of my clients and my community far, far worse. So the themes that I were seeing, they were just becoming too common to ignore. I was also inspired by a shift I was seeing in the NDP, and that is a shift that is returning to our progressive roots. Now more than ever, the NDP is articulating a clear alternative from the Sask Party. It's a clear contrast, and I'm excited about that. We are not running an austerity platform. We are running a platform where we champion key investments that will have long-term impacts on our communities. We are thinking ahead about how to build a robust and sustainable economy for generations to come. We're taking climate change seriously and committing to ambitious legislative targets. We're finally fighting back and changing the conversation around that in this province in ways that focus on workers and people instead of big corporations. We have committed to stop pouring resources into the wrong end of the system. We will address the mental health, addiction, and poverty crises that feed the dead-end criminal justice system that I work in every day, as well as our frontline healthcare, as well as strain our frontline healthcare system. We have committed to taking significant steps towards universal childcare, and I consider this key for meaningful gender equality. We have committed to pay equity legislation. We have an exciting slate of nearly 50% of our candidates are strong women leaders, environmental engineers, social workers, public interest lawyers, frontline workers, tradeswomen, you name it. So these are the people we want shaping our public policy. So these are just some of the changes I'm excited to be part of in the NDP. This is the NDP that is its best self, and I'm excited to fight for this vision of a Saskatchewan that puts people first. Thank you.
All right, thank you very much, Mira. All right, next up, it is Don Kirk from the Progressive Conservative Party. There we go. Okay, you're good to go, Don.
Okay, good evening, people of Elphinstone-Centre constituency, and to anyone else who may be watching this event. My name is Don Kirk, as has already been stated, and I am running as the candidate for the Progressive Conservative Party. I'm very grateful to the Cathedral Voice for giving me this opportunity to express my views. For, you see, the media, with one possible exception, that being Access, has shown no interest in doing that at all. But this is no surprise because we live in a very limited democracy. We may scoff at one-party systems in other countries, and perhaps at the two-party system south of us, but we are in something very close to a de facto two-party system right here. Moreover, we must struggle to find democracy even though party rule is supreme. All you have to do is see how only the leaders of those two ruling parties got to debate widely and publicly, to my knowledge at least. Finally, we have the first past the post system, which means that even though large numbers of people, sometimes even a majority, may want other parties or candidates to represent them, this may not happen. Elsewhere, one finds proportional representation, which has been promised but never seen, where if 10% of the people want party X, that party will have 10% of the seats in the legislature, very roughly speaking. A much more democratic system. Some fear this kind of multi-party legislature will be chaotic. But I ask you, Is the yelling of accusations back and forth between the two leading parties not chaotic and non-productive? We have to believe that a group of intelligent people with a common interest, that of serving those they represent, are capable of reaching a compromise, if not consensus. I want to try to move one tiny step in that direction by being a dark horse candidate of sorts and run as a progressive conservative. But I can tell you that I will not be bound by party discipline, and our leader, Ken Gray, has assured me that he accepts this. Now, let me address the content of the leading parties in a very general way, since they are the ones to beat. Both parties are fundamentally the same in that one, they prefer to look backwards at history and to point to the failings of the other. This is both irrelevant because what someone did in the past is never any guarantee of what they will do in the future. People change and so do situations. And it's totally unproductive because we are not told what they plan for the future in any kind of detail. These two parties are also fundamentally the same in that they offer the electorate carrots in the form of building programs, more schools, more hospitals, more roads. But these things change nothing. The future will look exactly the same as it does today, except that none of today's problems will have been resolved. And ladies and gentlemen, we do have problems to solve. Not just issues of a few more dollars to buy things that have gone up anyway, nor jobs that come and go with the big beginning and completion of the mega projects that are undertaken without the necessary thought as to how necessary or how useful they will be. I'm speaking of projects like the Regina bypass, $2 billion for a road that's practically empty at a time when we should be preparing for new methods of mass transportation, like rail, which is infinitely more efficient, at least in terms of the energy it consumes. Even worse, we do not need billions, 4 or 5, who knows, spent on irrigating a dryland agricultural region when the enormous waste of water, our most precious resource, bar none, will be taking place in an historical period, which we can probably expect to have a shortage of water. Are we going to compete with California? They're wondering today if they made a mistake, as they have to go ever deeper to find the water they need. What we need is real change. We are only going to solve our problems by changing the way we do things. Neither of the leading parties are offering anything new. Example, so we build new and probably extravagant hospitals. Both the Sask Party and the NDP want this, but at least the Sask Party does not want a whole new one. Perhaps they're conscious of the towering debt they are proposing elsewhere, like yet another $1 billion bypass for Saskatoon. But where are the staff going to come from? Overseas? Currently, our own excellent teaching hospital in Saskatoon sends most of its highly subsidized graduates south of the USA, where they make 4 times as much. Why? Can we not expect them to stay if we pay for their education? It's the people who provide the medical care that restores your health, not the building. We should seek the best staffing possible, and that means using the people we train here. Thank you.
Awesome. Thanks, Don. Sorry to have to cut you off there.
No, that's fine.
All right. Awesome. Okay. Okay, thanks a lot for that, everybody. We are now going to move on to the prepared questions. And again, the Cathedral Area Community Association put these questions together, and we provided these to the candidates several days ago so that they could prepare their answers for these. Each candidate will have 3 minutes to answer these questions. So question number 1 is, municipalities across Saskatchewan face significant budget challenges due to both the COVID pandemic and infrastructure deficits. How will you work to ensure that Regina is able to access provincial and federal funding to cover its priorities? And first person to speak on this is Naomi Hunter from the Green Party. You are muted. There you go.
So one of the things that's happened in our province is that the federal government has at different times been willing to offer a lifeline in order to make sure that social programming and things that would further the quality of life for residents, especially in our center, were kept available. The federal government was willing to help with money to keep the STC going. The Sask Party chose to shut it down anyway, even though we were offered a lifeline to keep this needed service going. This is something that I know my family used the STC often. It's how we took family holidays out to see my family on the coast. It's how we traveled. My children both took the STC from Regina up to our family farm to help at harvest. And this is something that has really impacted the lives, especially of poor people, since it was shut down. As well, there was federal money offered to help with a pool that we needed built in Regina. And the Green Party definitely would have accepted that help from the federal government. As well, though, right now, when federal transfer payments come through, only 10% are made available to municipalities. And municipalities must otherwise rely purely on taxation. They are responsible for all of the infrastructure that any municipality needs. So in order for Regina to become a fully transitioned city living off of clean energy and having the trees we need in order to have an urban forest and all those other things, the cost of that under this current program would fall squarely on the shoulders of our municipality. The Green Party would up those federal payments over immediately so that municipalities have more control over their money. To me, this is a really logical step. So many, even though I'm running provincially, so many green concepts actually implement the best on a municipal level. So making sure that municipalities have the ability to enact good policy because they have the money to put it in place without going into debt, which often happens, is really, really key to seeing Regina become fully renewable. I still am running on something that the Greens have run on for years. We want to see a solar panel on every roof in Regina, every roof in the province. We have the highest amount of solar in the country, and it would be a natural thing for Saskatchewan to be relying more heavily on solar instead of cutting it like the Sask Party did in favor of a nuclear secretariat that would take over 10 years to put in place. This is something that as Greens we would prioritize, making sure that we have that good clean technology done in a safe way that would also benefit people with lower utility rates right away. Thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Okay, next up on this question is Mira Conway.
Thanks. So municipalities across Saskatchewan face significant budget challenges due to COVID, but also infrastructure, deficits. And the first thing I would say about this is that the Sask Party has not honored their commitment to under the new PST that they introduced. Originally, the Sask Party committed to 1% divided amongst municipalities, but this was brought down to 3/4. At the same time, the Sask Party has downloaded the costs of services and infrastructure to Regina without any corresponding increases to cover these associated costs. So there is significantly less provincial funding for services today than there was 10 years ago. And we see that in terms of decreasing provincial contribution to paratransit. This impacts people who need accessible transit the most and don't have alternatives. The costs associated with the GTH, the implications for the city on that are reasons in itself to do a public inquiry which the NDP has called for. Another example is, of course, the stadium, and there are many others. So despite the Sask Party's increase in the PST, Regina is getting a smaller piece of the overall pie and bearing more of the costs. And unfortunately, cities are very limited in what revenue that they can bring in. And that just means that the people of this riding are bearing those costs more and more. Add to all of this, of course, the impacts of COVID, which of course exposed gaping inequalities. We're facing down a real crisis in terms of how to guide people through this historical moment. And absolutely an NDP government would stand beside municipalities and work to partner to solve those difficult challenges. We would ensure that Regina can make up for those shortfalls. We would work with them to develop an action plan that gets at the socioeconomic issues we're facing not only as a city, but as a province. Because the issues that the NDP has already committed to addressing through our platform, which are responsive to the hardships that folks are experiencing right now in Regina, which have been, of course, amplified by COVID, food insecurity, an increasing addiction and mental health crisis, poverty, investing in health and education. These need to be tackled, of course, at both levels of government. So I think that the province obviously needs to have a seat at the table. It needs to listen and provide meaningful support locally where required. We will work with municipalities to develop a plan, and we will advocate for funds from the federal government, and we will not leverage, important community projects like the pool for political purposes, like the Sask Party did in the summer of 2019.
All right. Thanks very much, Mira.
Thanks.
Okay. So final speaker on this question about getting funding to cities is Don Kirk from the PC Party. Should be good to go there, Don.
Yes. Yes. Well, in my view, I tend to, I think, differ a little bit in that I see that in my opinion, the provincial government has to take the leadership role, and I don't have much confidence in the municipal government doing its job in determining how to take the big decisions that need to be made to deal with the basically more global issues that are being faced by the province and by the country. Similarly, I believe that the federal government needs to be considered quite carefully and quite consistently throughout. Yes, we have seen what I would call a disappointing performance by the federal government, but that need not be forever. And I think that the last thing we need to do is to antagonize the federal government by refusing to go along with some of its project or its decisions. Especially when they're relatively insignificant ones, in my opinion. In other words, the carbon tax by the federal government need not have been by the federal government. I think what we need to do is work a greater degree of cooperation between all levels of government. This having said this, I have also said understand the peculiarities of their province. So,
excuse me.
Yes.
Sorry about that, Don. You were breaking up. We're having trouble hearing what you're saying. Perhaps if you turn your camera off, and then we could hear what you're saying.
Okay, I'm not sure how to do that. Let's see. What would be the influence of the camera? Okay, here we go. Okay, is that better?
Typically that does help.
Is that better?
Yep.
Okay, well, it may be partly my fault because I was struggling a little bit with what I was trying to say. Basically, I want the main focus as far as decision making for the province to be at the level of the provincial government. I think the provincial government is where we have the resources to make the kind of more global decisions for the future. And there's nowhere is that more true than in respect to the pandemic and so on, and the problems with the need to carefully manage resources and energy resources. There's the one thing that has stood in the way of dealing with the pandemic is a lack of consistency and a lack of clarity and a lack of involving the public, getting them truly on side and having them really understand what's going on. It's no good having all kinds of various ideas being bandied about. You may not have the perfect solution, but for heaven's sake, don't debate it in the public forum. Make your decision and go ahead with it consistently and clearly, and get the people alongside. That's the way I think the pandemic should be dealt with.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Sorry, that's time, Don.
Okay.
Awesome. Thanks a lot. And sorry about that. Yeah, just so you know, it's the magic of Zoom. If you're having connection troubles, sometimes turning your camera off reduces the amount of bandwidth you're using and everything seems to work better. Okay, replace spotlight. Okay, so thank you for that, everybody. That was our first question. Next up is our second question, but I just want to let everybody know that we're still hunting for questions in the chat room. I think we only have 2 or 3. We have 3 questions. So this segment should be up in about 9 minutes. So if you have questions for the audience question section, now's your time to start sending them in. Please send them to everyone in the chat window and we'll capture them there. So the next question from the Community Association is, Regina recently passed the Make Regina a Renewable City motion. This motion commits the city of Regina to become a 100% renewable energy city by 2050. To achieve this, the city will need to work with the provincial and federal governments and with the provincial crown corporations. If elected, how would you help the city of Regina achieve its renewable city goal? And first up on that question is Naomi Hunter from the Green Party.
Hello, that's such a great question. I have been to quite a few of the meetings about making Regina a renewable city, and the most consistent thing that I keep saying every time I get a chance to speak is that the very first thing that I would do as a provincial government is change that timeline. 2050 simply is too late, and we need to move that up. The climate clock that's ticking down the hours, minutes, and days that we have left to deal with this crisis, and it is a crisis. It's not something that we can just deal with as business as usual or hope anymore, is 7 years. So we need to change that timeline to 10 years at the most. So that'll be the first thing. But as far as what things I think would be most important, and that would be, of course, sustainable transportation options. Right now, Regina's city transit can use a lot of improvement. We need to switch over to clean energy as our transportation. We need more fast charging stations. We need to encourage people to use options like City Bus. The City Bus needs to have more efficient routes and be accessible to everyone. And we need to encourage options like the Regina car share that I'm a member of. 40 of us actually share different vehicles. There's one parked behind my house, and these options are available in Regina. We can encourage more biking and walking as well, making our communities so that there is access, like in North Central. It's a food desert, as has been brought up already. Great point, Mira. You know, this is something we can do something about as both a provincial and a municipal government. There have been cases where the provincial government and the municipal government have got together and they've subsidized, they've opened their own healthy grocery store so that people are able to walk within their community and make sure they have access to good, healthy food. This is a really green option. Also, due to the plight of Dutch elm disease in our city, so many of the trees that have been planted have had to be cut down due to disease. There are certainly options where we can plant many trees and make an urban forest. This also helps to decrease heat in the summertime and makes for a more enjoyable community for those of us that live here. I would say that many cities have already gone to 100% renewable, and they've done it in different areas like electricity, heating, cooling, or their transportation sectors. But we need to do that on all of these areas in Regina. And in fact, through our entire province. We need to deal with leaky building syndrome. This is an area, Saskatchewan is very cold. And with government, we can use the carrot or the stick and provide incentives for people to retrofit their homes. This is easily doable and something I remember as a rebate program from my youth. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much. Okay. Next up on this question is Mira Conway from the NDP for 3 minutes.
Thank you. So I'm also glad for this question. Of course, climate change is one of the single largest challenges of this moment. And I'm glad to see some really strong commitments from the NDP on this issue. We need a practical framework to transform our society now. And I am committed to doing my part to ensure that the NDP continues down this road. And I hope to be a strong voice within the caucus and within the party in developing that plan. This particular question is very important. If we look to Regina or Saskatoon, the two urban centers that make up 50% of the population of Saskatchewan and account for nearly 50% of its GDP, both have embarked on ambitious and comprehensive renewable energy strategies. Why? Because the Sask Party government has demonstrated zero leadership on this. And when Regina passed this motion, they didn't hear from a single cabinet minister, a single crown corporation asking, how do we partner on this? How do we make this happen? How do we work together? There's been absolutely no action on this issue. The NDP has committed to 100% renewable energy by 2050. That's a targeted, that's a legislated target, which is in line with this motion's target. This is time. We have unparalleled potential for solar, wind, geothermal energy. We need to look at retrofitting. We need to bring in key stakeholders, be it workers, Indigenous communities, and youth, of course. I was outdoor knocking with Kevin Bittman, president of Unifor 594, just the other day, and we talked about how refinery workers are supportive of a just and fair transition because they want meaningful work that will pay them well and put their skills to use, and they want that work to be sustainable. Scott Moe has been wholly absent on this debate, and he's been actively undermining any progress on this issue. And I'm wondering if he's even paying attention. He just seems more busy deflecting to Justin Trudeau, tweeting out his support for Trump and defending Jason Kenney against criticisms of the Alberta tar sands. The people of Saskatchewan don't seem to fall very high on his priority list, and the challenge of climate change doesn't appear anywhere. So they're really sticking their heads in the sand. They're in the pocket of big corporations on this issue, and they are squandering our opportunity to be on the leading edge of a greener world. We know there is an urgent need for drastic change. We know the change is coming, and we need to ensure our economy is ready and our workers are getting out ahead.
Excellent. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
Okay. Dawn, you're up next. Do you want to try turning the camera back on? I got a notice in chat that maybe it was just my computer that was the problem and not yours. So maybe if you want to turn your camera back on, we can give that a go. And my apologies on this.
Yeah, okay, I think we got it now. Do you,
There.
yeah, okay.
Okay, you got 3 minutes, Don.
Okay, well, this is an issue where I really know something about, and I'm at the other end of the spectrum when it comes to this from the other two candidates tonight. I have personal experience with all the various technologies that we're talking about. We're building a retirement house that involves straw bales, involves wind power, all solar off the grid. I've dealt with all those issues from the computers that control the batteries to the batteries themselves to everything. And I can tell you that people who think that they're entranced by the technology, they have another thing coming, because it's not as simple, not as easy, and not as reliable as they think it is. And furthermore, we actually, if you look at the facts, the potential of wind and solar is nowhere near as great as people think it is. That the fact is that without the backup from fossil energy, you'd be in the dark a lot of the time. Batteries go down; they have to be watched. We get cold, a stretch of cold and or dark weather, and we're in trouble right away. So, and then as far as oil is concerned, and then the CO2 scare, that's what I really think it is to a large degree. I don't deny that there's changes in the climate, but I don't buy the idea that this is all due to the burning of fossil fuels at all. You can see that over in historical record shows that there have been tremendous variation in temperature, and although the CO2 level is rising more rapidly than it ever has before, it's still a long way from being the cause of anything much. Now, the potential for properly utilizing the oil reserves that we have, which back in the day they were afraid that we'd run out of it, but in point of fact, we're nowhere near running out of it, and there's an abundance of various types of petroleum products that we have, and the cleanest of these is natural gas. Now, our wonderful municipal government failed to keep the natural gas vehicles going, which was in fact, they closed the natural gas fueling station. Well, I've been running a natural gas truck for years, and I can tell you it's very clean burning and very economical. There's no reason in the world why we can't utilize the extremely cheap natural gas here for our vehicular transportation as we transition, instead of sending it to China. Now, the other thing is that it's going to take anyone who thinks that they're going to change the world in 10 years, they can forget it. It's going to take at least 50 years. And the people need to be brought on side, and we have a lot of work to get those people on side. Okay. They're all driving, okay?
That's time done.
All right.
Okay, thank you very much. That is the end of the question portion, the pre-prepared questions. Okay, so we've been collecting questions from the chat box. We will continue to do that as we start to go through these. I'll pull the first question from here. Each candidate will have 2 minutes to respond to these questions. So the first one is, actually, let's just move in closer so I can see. First question. This is from Larry. I would like to ask the candidates if they support expanding capacity for oil pipelines and further fossil fuel development in Saskatchewan. And the first person with 2 minutes on that is Naomi Hunter from the Green Party.
Big surprise here. That would be a big old no. And I have the full support of my party on that. We, of course, are concerned about the workers who work in this industry. I have 3 pipeline workers who are running as candidates in the Green Party during this election. They too are worried about a livable world for their children. They want to see a kind and caring transition over to jobs that make sense, that the pipeline would be a natural fit for. pipeliners. Many of the same skill set works quite well for wind technology. Oil and gas workers. We've seen situations in Alberta, just next door, where old oil and gas wells that have been abandoned have been turned over to geothermal. The same workers that set those up and were servicing them already when they were oil and gas have transitioned into the same people who now look after the geothermal. There are solutions. Of course, we can't leave any of the people behind. We need to make sure that a first priority is offering options, making sure that we have a guaranteed livable income, so that as people transition into other jobs, they have something to fall back on. A guaranteed livable income is set up for exactly the kind of situation that solving the climate crisis presents us with. People will be able to go back to school, retrain. And while I know that everyone always says, but I don't want to do another job. I've loved what I've done, Carla. I too have been in that position. I thought I was going to run restaurants forever. And I, through time and flexibility, ended up doing a variety of jobs in my life. So with horse and buggies did find other work. So I see us moving forward and still looking after the people who work in the industry. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Naomi. And next up on this question is, whoops, sorry, I just unmuted you, or I just muted you, Mira. There we go.
How's that? Can you hear me?
Perfect. Okay, you got 2 minutes.
Yeah. So again, at the risk of repeating myself, Scott Moe has done, he spent more than a decade doing absolutely nothing about climate change, allowing greenhouse gas emissions to grow. Saskatchewan is the second worst jurisdiction in the country when it comes to energy efficiency, which is the easiest place to start on emissions reduction. So the Saskatchewan NDP will move to 50% renewable by 2030 and 100% power generation from non-emitting sources by 2050. And myself personally as a candidate, I will always fight to represent the concerns of this riding. And that is the concerns of folks who are worried about climate change. That is the concerns about Indigenous communities. And that is the concern of youth and energy workers. I mentioned earlier with energy workers there. I speak on a daily basis with steel workers on the doorstep, many of whom have received indefinite layoff notices because, you know, well, for one, Jason Kenney, who purports to be, you know, Scott Moe's best friend, they're using American steel to build those pipelines. But we could be using steel workers. We could be putting them to work in renewable sectors, just as Naomi has spoken about. Actually attract that would allow people to live in dignity. My worry with that is that, you know, I want to focus on how those resources could be otherwise deployed in society. And I think that's where the NDP has got right by investing in, you know, universal childcare, small sizes, healthcare.
Okay. Thank you, Mira. I'm not getting anything.
Do you want me to shut down?
Yeah, I think we might have to do that. Oh, I'm frozen. Hey, sorry, I am having a bit of a problem on my end. I think we have that fixed now, hopefully. Sorry about that. I kind of lost my connection there for a second. Okay, Dawn, you are up next for 2 minutes. Do you need, does any, like, if you need me to read the question, just let me know.
No, it's okay. I'll just respond to what we've already heard. heard probably. Yeah, so again, I'm not on the same page as my opponents. When it comes to pipelines of potential, I think what we need to do is focus more greater determination on how these pipelines can be made. They can be tested, passed, and no reason why we have to ship it all over the place. We could refine it in it's being produced. I'd like to just briefly address the idea of alternative technologies. The idea of electricity, like electric cars, is not at all. If we had electric cars to any extent, the utilities would not be able to function. We and so forth, and financial problems like they have in California. But the grid can't handle all the electricity that would be required for electric cars. People aren't even considering that. Nuclear energy, I think, is a way of the future, but not necessarily as we know it today. We could be using thorium instead, and there would be a lot fewer worries about contamination and meltdowns. So, but I think pipelines are still a safe way if we manage it properly and we do it with enough government involvement.
All right. Thank you, Don. Okay. Oh, I just lost my cards. Just need a second here to regroup. Okay, second question from the gallery. And everybody can hear me, right?
Yep.
Okay, good. This one is from Michael and Richard. These were similar questions, so we smooshed them into one question. This is a question for Mira Conway, the NDP candidate. Do the donations received by the NDP from Cameco, Mosaic, CIBC, TD Bank, the Regina Realtors Association, the Saskatchewan Heavy Construction Association, and other corporations mean they will receive preferred treatment from your party if elected? Has your campaign benefited from any of those donations? So that will go to Mira first, and then we will go around.
Sure. Thank you for that question from Michael Wright. Good luck in Lakeview. He's the Green candidate there. I'm glad that Michael asked that question. No, my personal campaign has not received any such donations. And I believe those kinds of donations, they usually give to the two major parties. But, if we look off the top of my head, CIBC gave 1,000 to NDP in 2019, and I think over 7 times that to the Sask party. But my line on this and the NDP's line on this is that this should not be happening. And Ryan Miley and the NDP have committed to getting big money out of politics. Ryan Miley has committed to banning corporate and also union donations going forward. We have some of the loosest oversight of political donations in the country. It's the Wild West, and that needs to change. It undermines our democracy at its very core. And we've absolutely taken a very strong line on that. But no, my personal campaign has not received corporate donations.
All right, thank you, Mira. Naomi and Dawn, do you want to respond to this question in some way on this topic? Raise your hand if yes. Okay, well, Dawn, you're the next up in the order, so we'll go with you first.
Yeah, I want to very clearly state that I am equally opposed to the kind of influence that it comes about through donations to political parties by corporations, or for that matter, any even pension funds or anything like that that have, or unions that have a vested interest. I stay away from that completely. I have no such support whatsoever. So I just wanted to say that. That's all.
Okay, thank you, Don. And Naomi. Replace spotlight. There we go. You should be good to go for 2 there.
Well, this question took me a little bit off guard. The Greens don't accept any corporate or union donations. We're mainly funded by small $10 donations from individuals. And I totally agree with Mira. I'm really excited that the NDP is moving forward on that. It's something that I think we need to take the big money out of politics, level the playing field, and go back to the good old days when politics was about what people had to say and not about how many billboards they could afford to put up and how many TV ads they could put out. I mean, good old-fashioned forums like this used to be how politicians got their word out. And I think that Saskatchewan certainly would benefit from seeing a political system that limited the amount of political spending that was available to candidates and put some rules in place about this. So I'm really, really happy and supportive of the NDP's motion on that. It's something the Greens have our policy and are 100% on board with. So when we're elected, I look forward to working with the NDP on that policy. Thank you.
All right. Thank you very much, Naomi. Okay. Our next question from the audience is from Trish. And it's a 2-part question from Trish. And hang on a sec. It goes, how do you envision the provincial government's relationship with First Nations? Can you name the Indigenous groups that you have reached out to and worked with during your campaign? And this,
The second part.
And the second part of that is from Darren. So again, we're mooshing 2 questions together. First up in the order on, oh God damn it. First up in the order is Naomi Hunter from the Green Party with 2 minutes.
During this election campaign, I have traveled all of Saskatchewan and stopped in all 61 ridings. I have visited numerous First Nations communities and received a lot of input, and we have 16 Indigenous candidates this election, so 25% of our candidate slate. And I think that that kind of representation is really important because white settler people shouldn't be in charge of making the sorts of legislation that are needed to move forward in reconciliation. I absolutely feel that it's really important that we see reflected in our democracy everybody who is part of our society. So that's something that I'm really, really dedicated to. And I believe that rather than what I've often heard politicians say is that they're going to go and they're going to listen to people as to what is needed, I would instead say that we should be implementing the many recommendations that are already available. We have the Murder Women's Investigation Report, we have Jordan's Principle, we have the recommendations of the United Nations, which Saskatchewan and Canada signed on to over 10 years ago and have done absolutely nothing about, which would bring everyone up to a level playing field. And this is something that, I mean, we've made commitments to end poverty as a country, as a province. These are things that we absolutely can do. We can end injustice. We can decide as a society that we're going to be an equitable people. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Naomi. Next up is Mira Conway from the NDP on relationships with First Nations.
Yes, thank you. So in terms of some of the groups that I've reached out to, I've met with the North Central Family Centre, the Métis Friendship, the Métis Fellowship, the Circle Project, the Indigenous Christian Fellowship. I completed a blanket exercise with residents of North Central in Victoria Park. I went to deliver turkeys to the Mamaweatitin and met the folks who do the chili for children over there. I have been doing my best to make inroads in that community in a good way and continue. I consider that will be one of the most significant projects of my term, and that's something that Warren McCall did in a way that we can admire. Through my work as a legal aid lawyer, you know, there's not a day that I go out door knocking in polls or run into a client that I got bail for, or a family that I fought for with the Ministry of Social Services. In terms of our policy, you know, we have 23% candidates that identify as Indigenous or Métis. We need representation. We can do better with that number, absolutely. But if you look at what our Indigenous MLAs have been doing, they have been advanced. Doyle Vermette is broad-based consultation on the suicide crisis that, of course, was tragically voted down by the Sask Party. Asking for the number of days that he did. We want to see an implementation of all of the calls to action, and we want to see closing the gaps on healthcare and education. Something that I am especially passionate about is giving control and guidance to Indigenous folks over their child welfare system, because that to me is the new residential school system. And I see the violence and the fallout from that every day in my work.
Thank you.
And yeah.
Sorry.
Out of
Thanks,
time.
Mary. Yeah. All right. Next up on the question of relations with First Nations is Don Kirk. You have 2 minutes.
Yeah, well, once again, I have a different point of view. I have worked up north in Buffalo Narrows as a social worker. I have worked in all kinds of places that involve fellow workers. That includes working for Dell Tech Excavations out of Alberta, with which is a native-owned operation. And come again? Anyway, so I know exactly what it's like to work with Native people, and I find that a lot of Native people are really excellent workers. Shoveled sand with Native guys, and it was great. But you need to make sure that our society is based on a meritocracy, not special consideration for people that are based on some kind of vague idea of where they belong in the you know, whether they're this color or that color, or they're from here or from there. We need to be all at one piece, one solid country, one solid nation, without exception, without reverse discrimination. And I find that the more we turn to the past and try to atone for our mistakes, we end up screwing up in the present. The thing is, the past is the past. We need to forget this idea of one-sided reconciliation, where the only people that are making any moves to reconcile are the white people, the so-called settlers who built this country. And you know, we have to see reconciliation as something that flows from both sides. Both sides need to be reconciled with the other, and the only way we can do that is we leave the past behind and go ahead into the future together with mutual goals. So I mean, that may sound harsh, but I think that in the great scheme of things, the fairness is there. That's what we need in this society, is fairness.
Okay, that's time, Don.
Yep.
All right. Next question is, this is from Van Leuven. I would have benefited greatly from more personal interactions with my education. Or sorry, let me start that again. I would have benefited greatly from more personal interactions with my educators. And with the pandemic putting children in close proximity at risk, what will each party do to reduce class sizes? First person to speak on this for 2 minutes is Naomi Hunter from the Green Party again.
Thank you for that question. Saskatchewan was already suffering an education crisis before COVID-19 hit. And I attended a protest shortly before the province went into lockdown, and teachers were already begging for more supports in the classroom, lower classroom sizes, talking about the extreme stress they were under trying to provide the best possible education and care for our children. After quarantine happened and the entire province ended up learning and going to work from home or taking a leave of absence, depending on people's situation, we had a very long time period where I and numerous other people were extremely hopeful that when the Sask Party announced the back to school plan for the children, that they would have addressed some of these initial concerns. Instead, what we saw was that the Sask Party basically announced a no plan. It was pretty much exactly the same as what they had already put out before lockdown, and it was clearly inadequate. They had many opportunities to see what was being done across the province. I, for one, really like many of the things that we've seen some of the schools individually put in Saskatchewan, but I think that I would have liked to see more option for distance learning, for immediately reducing class sizes. I would have liked to see the government put in place that students would go half of them one day and half another, so that there would be a desk in between people each day, and that they would have the option to learn from home every second day with further supports, and provided internet and computers, whatnot, so that the students were able to access that help, that work from home, because not everyone has a computer in their home. Like we know in my house, my children are using my laptop right now. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you, Naomi. Okay, next up is Mira Conway from the NDP with 2 minutes.
Thank you. So yes, the NDP believes that Saskatchewan kids deserve safe schools and they deserve smaller class sizes. But that isn't a reality. Due to the Sask Party's cuts and underfunding. They've cut 54 million from classrooms in their 2017 budget, and per student funding has remains $300 lower than it was in 2015-2016. That means this year our divisions are operating with a $59 million shortfall. And these cuts have resulted in fewer psychologists, counselors, speech language therapists compared to 2015-2016. And they've made a sort of bad situation worse by coming up with the worst back to school plan amid a pandemic. And I totally agree with Naomi that there could have been a lot of creative solutions considered, but unfortunately there was just nothing for our teachers, for our students, and my partner's a teacher, and every day he's facing this down, and we're discussing it, the lack of clarity, the concern. We've already seen a couple schools shut down. We've got COVID cases at 66 today. I believe that's a record high. So we're just to see more of that. The NDP will invest $125 million in Saskatchewan classrooms, reduce class sizes, and increase targeted supports for vulnerable students. That is part of our fully costed platform.
All right, thank you very much. Next up is Dawn from the PC Party.
Thank you. Well, this is one area where I tend to agree with much of what's been said. I too believe strongly in small class sizes. I know that some of the best education that can be had is had by small classes. One, where a good relationship can be created between the teacher and the students. Even the small one-room schoolhouse probably did the best job of any school in training up its students. Anyway, without going into that details of why that happened, it was a fact. The problem is that we need to look at schools not as some kind of a monument to I don't know, the wealth, the affluence of our society, the way the new schools that are being built, that's what they are, just monuments or monoliths of glass and steel, beautiful buildings, but they're not efficient in terms of educating people. Some new ones I can think of have corridors you could drive a car down. You know, it's completely unnecessary. I think we need more schools, but we need to build schools that are efficient and not extravagant. When it comes to education, that's where I'm at. I don't think this isolation will last forever. I'm very skeptical of the ability of electronic, teaching. I find that most students report that they do much better with a teacher than they do with a computer. So I'd like to see more teachers. I'd like to see more men teaching in schools, because we need to have models for them as well as for the women. So that's the way I feel about schools.
All right, thank you very much, Don. Okay, we've got time for one more question before we move to closing statements, and that'll take us to the bottom of the hour. That one there? Okay, final question. Our COVID numbers in Saskatchewan are going up. What would your government do to prevent the spread? For example, would you implement a province-wide mask program, legislation, or support municipalities who wish to enact one? First up on this is Naomi Hunter from the Green Party.
I would implement a province-wide mask policy. And in fact, I question why that hasn't happened already. Leading scientists at this point, of course, with COVID-19, we need to keep listening to what the researchers and scientists are saying, because this is a new disease. It's something that we don't have all the information on. While at first there was huge emphasis on contact passage, and I know I was one of those people who was washing all my groceries quite assiduously as soon as they came in the house. Now what the experts and our chief medical health officer are really stressing is that mask use is one of the main ways that stop droplets from transmitting, and that especially in situations, I mean, we were just talking about schools. While kids may not be those mainly affected by COVID-19, a lot of the studies are saying that children can be carriers. So I certainly think that when in the 1920s, when we saw another pandemic, the use of masks was used extensively. And so this isn't something that is historically unheard of. It's something that within memorable time, my grandmother, who's a nurse, and my grandfather, who were a doctor up on Paradise Hill, remember all of this. And my Nana has said while we were on FaceTime that, you know, to her, it's just exactly the same as remembering that point in time in history. Thank you.
Excellent. Thank you very much, Naomi. Next up, it's Mira Conway from the NDP with 2 minutes.
Yeah. And I've just been scrolling through the chat and I missed some things, and I just want to take part of my time. Larry Neufeld thought I didn't answer a question, and I'm sorry I wasn't more clear. I don't see how we can expand our capacity for fossil fuels and also meet the legislative targets we've committed to. So I'm sorry I wasn't more clear about that. In terms of the mask issue, I'm very concerned to see that Scott Moe and the Sask Party has been pandering to anti-mask groups. We've seen that in press conferences. We've seen that on his social media. And we need science-based policy. It's that simple. And I know that Ryan Miley, who's very strong, of course, on this portfolio and on this issue, has identified the need to have predetermined triggers for when we introduce a mandatory mask policy. And of course, I wouldn't be opposed to that. And I think if we keep seeing cases rise the way they are, it may come to that. So science-based policies. There can be no room for politics. There can be no room for politicizing the important role that our Chief Health Officer plays in this. And I've been very disappointed with how the pandemic has been dealt with by Scott Moe and the Sask Party.
All right, thank you very much. Up next, it's Dawn Kirk from the PC Party.
Okay, well, I addressed this issue slightly before. I think the problem with an emphasis on science is that exactly this is science has not been definitive. You know, I mean, that's the whole thing. You've got to have a policy that is consistent and adopted throughout without a lot of debate about it. In other words, we have the last thing we need. All our problems with the spread of this disease are coming from groups of people who have decided that they know better than others. You know, they aren't afraid of it. They're going to go ahead and party hardy if they want. And the reason you have that's happening is because there's been too much dissension about what needs to happen and how it happens. I don't care if you know, there's a different a difference of opinion on what to do. It's more important to follow one single truth when you don't know the facts. You need to have people alongside, and then once you get them on sides consistently following you, then if a new piece of information comes up that is changes the matter, changes your understanding of how the disease is transmitted, then the people will be with you and you can make the change. But this idea of, oh, well, maybe masks work, maybe they don't, you know, maybe how many people can we have in a room? This back and forth, 20, is it 20? Is it 5? Is it 50? Is it 100? This stuff creates a lack of comprehension. It creates a lack of confidence in the rules that are laid out, and we get a lack of people don't follow the rules, and that's the problem.
All right.
I've been in favor of masks from the beginning.
Okay, thank you very much, Don. That is it for our questions for this evening. Sorry we didn't get through everything that came in, but we do want to have the candidates get back to their families before too long, and we're coming up on 8:30 here. So first person with final comments is Naomi Hunter from the Green Party. There you go.
Thank you. As you go to vote on October 26, I'd like you to imagine what one green voice in our legislature could mean for you and your families. A move away from the status quo. We've seen the dynasties that have ruled this province for many years and what they can do already. The Liberals, of course, were legendary in this province at one time. The NDP have held power for up to 10 years at a time and have held the riding of Regina Elphinstone-Centre for as long as any of us can remember. The Sask Party has also been in power for 13 years, and before them, the Conservatives had their turn. Electing a Green Party representative would be legendary. I would be the first elected Green on the prairies, and we would see true opposition in this province. The word opposition used to be something that everyone could see as a valid part of government. To oppose, it's an important part of how our government works. We've seen that Greens, as they're elected everywhere, help bring in good, loving, kind policies like a guaranteed livable income, expanding our Medicare so that it covers dental care, pharmacare, mental health care services, and elder care. These are things that all of us can believe in. I'd like you to vote for someone you can believe in. On October 26th, vote Green and make history. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Naomi. Next up, it is Mira Conway.
Thank you. The NDP has articulated a clear alternative as the people of Saskatchewan navigate the impacts of COVID, of climate change, and of an increasingly uncertain future. We will reverse the cuts to education, the true cost of which COVID has laid bare. We will raise the lowest minimum wage in Canada so that working families aren't kept in poverty. We will end the influence of big money on politics and increase transparency so that our democracy is people-powered. We will guarantee a Sask First procurement plan that will keep our resources circulating in our homes and in our communities. We will end hallway medicine, shorten wait times, and again build a healthcare system that is the envy of the world. We've done it before, we'll do it again. We have championed pharmacare and committed to bringing back the STC, investing in home care to ensure dignity for folks with disability and for seniors. We will reverse the short-sighted elimination of the film tax credit that saw a mass exodus of creative communities from Saskatchewan. Because if we've learned anything from COVID, it is that the economy is not an end in of itself. It is a vehicle to support our community, our frontline workers, our healthcare workers, our artists, our teachers, our minimum wage workers are the economy, and that is who we and who I will fight for. I saw some questions about poverty reduction. We need to work towards a meaningful poverty strategy, and I want to start that on day one. I want to thank the Cathedral Community Association for hosting this event. I want to thank the folks that participated, Naomi for all the good work you do in the community. And I want to say something about the absence here, and that's the Sask Party. That is inexcusable. I think it's obscene that in this core urban riding, the Sask Party didn't show its face. There can be no democracy without access and without transparency. I want to just say that it would be the honor of my life to take my fight to the ledge, and thank everyone for coming tonight.
Excellent. Thanks very much, Mira.
Thank you.
And our last speaker tonight with 2 minutes is Don Kirk from the PC Party.
All right, well, I think we need to be realistic. That's the bottom line of my closing remarks. I think when it comes to the NDP, they're always great at their promises, all wonderful ideas. And then we have to remember that promises are just as easily broken after the fact, after they're in power. We have no guarantee. We really have no reason to believe that all these wonderful ideas are going to come to fruition. I think we should try a different party. Try to get some different thinking into the mix. As far as the Green Party is concerned, I think that their ideas are charming, but they're like fairy tales. They're not based on reality, and that's the way the Greens have been right from the beginning. The effect of someone, a great leader like or great thinker like Elizabeth May, her effect has been negligible because the great ideas that she had were just hers, or else in other instances they were not realistic. So I don't think it's going to do that much good to have a Green voice in the legislature, although it could be useful. Any alternative voice is a good thing to have in a forum like that. So anyway, that's I think the progressive conservatives that I belong to have a great track record in the past, and they deserve to have another chance at their vision of the future, which is quite a bit different than the one we've been exposed to. Thank you.
Okay. Thank you very much, Don. And that brings us to the end of tonight's Regina Elphinstone-Centre Candidate Forum. Just a few thank yous before I let you all go. Big thanks to the candidates, Mira, Naomi, and Dawn for showing up tonight. It was really great to have you guys here, and we really appreciated you coming out. Thanks to everybody who came in the gallery. I can't see your faces, but I did see your comments in the chat window. Really appreciate that you all came out. As I said at our other forum, I didn't think this would catch on and that we would get such a turnout, but we had over 30 people in the gallery at the peak here, and that's amazing. And that's, you need to see that in a democracy. Huge thanks to Linda Rattray at the Cathedral Area Community Association, who handled sending out all of the emails and stuff to everybody. Thanks so much for the help. Thanks to Karen, who's been here beside me helping with capturing questions and everything. Yeah, that's it. Have a great night. Thanks for coming out. Please fold up your chairs and put them away on your way out. And have a good Monday. See you.